Thanks for coming to our lightning round, tips for teaching literacy instruction and information literacy to first-gen college students, non-traditional students, or English as a second language students, and evaluating a consumer health website. So this is slightly different than the usual lightning round because we actually only have 2 lightning rounds scheduled for this particular hour, so it gives our speakers a little more time to talk. So our second speakers will also be evaluating a consumer health website with Lee Richardson and Barbara Rochin-Renner from UNC Chapel Hill, and Dwayne Teague will be leading us off from North Carolina Wesleyan College.
For your patience, I'm Dwayne Teague, and some of you I may know, some of you I may not know, and I apologize for my little technology issues there for a second. I'll go ahead and confess I'm somewhat of a baby librarian. I've been out of the crib for about 1.5 years in terms of being an MLS librarian, although I'm not new to academic libraries. I've worked in academic libraries for 25 years, but I'm new as a librarian. So thank you all for your patience. And this is my very first virtual webinar presentation. So thanks for your patience. So you're going to get to see my notes over on the side. But once again, I'm Dwayne Teague. I'm at North Carolina Wesleyan College. And I wanted to present this topic, and I appreciate the opportunity because, again, I don't confess to be an expert by any means, but I did want to share some of my experiences in teaching library instruction and information literacy to first-generation students, college students, non-traditional or English as a second language students, and some of the things I tried that worked out, things that I tried that didn't work out, as well as maybe gaining some new experience from you all as well. And once again, I think it's important for us as librarians, as some of the other presenters today have talked about diversity, we've talked about inclusion, and I think that's important when we're talking about first-gen students, non-traditional students, students like me who are in their late 40s and went back to school, or ESL students. So that's the purpose of my presentation. And I'm just going to skip right along. And again, just as I say in the Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to that information behind the curtain in the bottom screen. But basically the learning outcomes that I hope that we'll discuss very quickly are how to effectively teach library instruction and information literacy. I'm going to sort of lump those 2 together in the essence of time. To first generation college students, regardless of age, ESL students, and I do make a quick note that my colleague who oversees the Writing Center here, she actually does not, she's an ESL expert, but she actually jokingly says actually it shouldn't be English as a second language because it could be, our students could be English as a third language or fourth language or fifth language. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to say ESL. Then non-traditional students, again, students that maybe are not in the early 20s, how to utilize humor in an appropriate way is a way to possibly make students feel more comfortable in both the in-person sessions as well as the one-on-one sessions for information literacy and library instruction. How to effectively utilize library terminology that connects your audience, your students, your patrons, if you're in a public library, with your presentation and your teaching methods, and how to best utilize assessment and feedback so that we can hone and continually do a better job of ensuring that we're meeting and exceeding the needs of our students and our patrons. I do want to backtrack just very quickly, though. Again, here at North Carolina Wesleyan, me and my colleagues, we're located here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, at our main library, the Pearsall Library. North Carolina Wesleyan College does have 8 satellite campuses located, 1 in the Raleigh-Durham area, as well as several throughout rural parts of eastern North Carolina. And so this presents some challenges for us in that some of these students, most of them actually are non-traditional. They work full-time jobs, they have families, they take classes at night. Some of these students, the classes that they're in are just in, the campuses are actually like office buildings. They're not even shared spaces with community colleges, so they don't have access physically to libraries. So those are things that I'm trying to work through. But a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about is my experience at Miami-Dade College in Miami, Florida, where I was a librarian, and library instruction was a big part of my job. And Miami-Dade College was a great learning experience for me because it is and still is known as a very diverse college. It's considered a state college. It's mostly community college, but they do offer a few BS degrees. As you'll see again in my notes there, the total enrollment of degree and non-degree seeking students at Miami-Dade College is about 100,000 or maybe a little over. That's throughout the Miami-Dade metro area. But Miami-Dade is known for its diversity. Within the student body, 150 plus countries are represented, speaking approximately 76 different languages. So I think that diversity University is very intriguing, and it was very beneficial for me as a new librarian last year. And the average age of the students down there is 25 years old. So again, just very quickly, I want to run through some of these terms are terms we're all familiar with, but who are our students, who are our users, our patrons? We have, again, traditional students, and I've used i.e. millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y, etc. Some of you may or may not like these terms, but this is what we hear a lot, and so I hope it's okay that I'm using those. Not what we call quote unquote non-traditional students, and again, that's just a phrase I'm comfortable with, and I have been a non-traditional student, so I can relate. And being in that seat and taking classes, having not been in school in 20 plus years. These could be baby boomers. I'm a Generation X student, so hopefully this could be helpful for those students. Again, ESL, English as a second language, or first generation college students. At Miami-Dade College, the majority of our students were first generation college students. They came from families where they were the first person in their family to ever go to college. So academia, research, learning and using libraries was not something that came naturally to a lot of those students. But just a couple of quick things, if possible. Again, some of these are not always feasible, but try to maybe in advance, if possible, learn a little bit about who your class is going to be or who you're going to be meeting with. Maybe you can hone your presentation or your talking points to that group. If you're at a college or a university, does your library instruction request form offer the opportunity for the instructor to provide you with a little bit of detail about who the class is going to be? Maybe that will help you in advance. Maybe not. I'll put wing it, because we in the librarianship have to wing it. Everything does, although we all, as Kelly and I were discussing the other day, I have a lot of OCD tendencies. A lot of us do, and that's a good thing. But everything is not always in our control, and sometimes we have to wing it and just go with the flow. But for me personally, whenever I go to do a library instruction session of any kind, I try to always have at least a one-page handout that has my contact information and a few highlights from the session. Obviously, if the professor has asked for something specific, I include that on the handout. That way the students leave with something tangible in their hand, and they can follow up later if they need to. Emphasizing that we as librarians, we're here for the students. I always tell students that if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have a job. And so I'm really grateful to have the chance to speak to them, and that we encourage them to come in and use the library. And as we heard earlier in other sessions, the library should be a safe place for them to come and ask any questions and not be judged. And that's something I take very seriously. And then just something technical, again, as I just experienced, technology sometimes is not always my friend. If that happens to you and the technology is not working in your class, just have a backup plan. I was going to do a session in Miami-Dade College, went in to do the presentation, and the projector system was not working. So we just backtracked. I handed out my handout, and I asked all the students if they had their iPhone, their laptop, any kind of device to pull those out, and we went through how to access the library website via their mobile devices. So we just sort of winged that presentation. Library terminology and jargon is something linguistics and is very intriguing to me. There are a lot of great articles out there on this topic, and some of you probably have written about them. So I don't claim to be the expert by any means, but I do think it's important that we as librarians really understand what is the terminology that we use every day that we're comfortable with, but maybe our users, our students, don't understand or know what those phrases mean. Some words could be library catalog, electronic databases, e-resources. How do you access a journal? How do you locate the library physically or virtually? Maybe we talk about this every day, but the students who maybe don't understand English as a primary language, maybe they're not familiar with the library, maybe these are phrases or terms that they're not familiar with. And if that's a roadblock, that's automatically stopping them from taking that next step to actually conducting research or working on their project. If we ask a student, do they know what an article is? Do they even know what that word article means? Do they know the difference between a popular periodical and a scholarly publication? I've had a lot of students in Miami-Dade College who did not know what a call number was. I would explain what Dewey was, what LC was, and explain that the call number basically is a map to get them to that book. And again, if we toss out the phrase, look up the call number, write down the call number, but if the students don't even know what that means, that's again a little bit of a roadblock for them. Again, just something similar is referencing what the difference between the reference desk and the circulation desk. And something else I encountered at Miami-Dade College was a lot of the students that I taught and worked with didn't know what logging in meant. Some of them did not have internet or Wi-Fi at their homes. They did not have their own personal computers or smartphones. So there were ways that I had to tailor my presentations or my instruction sessions to students who did not have access to things that we sometimes maybe take for granted. A couple of scenarios, again, we as librarians, I think it's important that if we are coming in to do an instruction session, that we are, yes, a guest of the professor, but that we should demand some respect as the instructor for that 30, 40 minutes. And sometimes there are occasions where students aren't paying attention, they're talking, they're sleeping. Maybe there are reasons for that happening. Maybe they're bored, maybe they aren't understanding what we're saying. Not to use the pun checked out, but maybe they have checked out for some reason. And is there some way that we can quickly surmise why that's taking place? I personally come from a long line of teachers and instructors, and I'm not afraid to take control of the class, because if you have a few students who are being disruptive or talking, that's a detriment to the other students who are trying to learn. And sometimes you have to call out someone and say, if you want to have that conversation, that's great. You need to take it outside so we can finish the class. I'm not afraid to do that. But again, my personality, I'm very outgoing. So I'm very comfortable with that. Some librarians may not be, and that's okay. We all have different ways of managing the classroom. Asking the students again, what is their feedback on the library? How comfortable are they with it? Do they know where the library is? Do they know how to access the website? When I'm doing instruction, I try to quote unquote assign homework in a fun way, just something that's tangible that they can take ownership of. And I'll tell them in the next 24 hours, you need to bookmark the homepage on your computer if you have one, or the next time you're in the library, log into the catalog and just search a topic that's of interest to you, something fun. Bookmark or actually take a look at the Purdue OWL website. Miami-Dade College did a great job of creating what they call the library quiz, which was maintained on our library homepage. And some of the faculty would allow students to use and take the quiz for extra credit. And basically it was a 20 question multiple choice. I'm going to show you a few snippets of it. That basically was a library 101 to make sure the students understood and comprehended what we taught them in the class. And again, it was just a chance for them to get assistance from us at the reference desk with some of those questions. And I'll just show you a couple of these are just a few screen grabs, again, from Miami-Dade College. Just some basic multiple choice questions, but these, while they may seem basic to us, they're very important to our students, because if they can't answer some of these basic questions, again, that's going to be a roadblock to their research in the future. One of the key ones you'll see, number 7 on this screen, is your PIN for logging in. If the students don't know how to log in from another location, that's going to be a roadblock for them. We want to make sure they understand that. And again, another quick image. This one, we actually broke down how the citations worked and why citations were important. Something is, again, the Purdue OWL website. A lot of students would say, oh, well, we can just copy and paste the citation from the website or from EBSCO and paste it in. And I always say to this day, yes, you can do that, but you need to ensure the citation is correct. Occasionally, the citation may be formatted incorrectly because it was computer generated. And so I think that's important to stress to students as well. Here at North Carolina Wesleyan College, I'm implementing something new that, fingers crossed, will go well. On February 22nd, we're hosting our first walk-in Wednesday as a drop-in session that my librarian colleagues and I are going to be hosting. We're hosting it in one session in the morning and one in the afternoon. And our goal is basically to engage our students who may not utilize the library, maybe students that don't feel comfortable in a group setting, but they're comfortable in coming in for 10 minutes with their cup of coffee in their hand and asking us some questions, showing them how to use some of the equipment. Again, just sort of one drop-in, one-off sessions that I hope is going to be beneficial. I'm going to show you the flyer in just a second. I created a very basic flyer. I sent it out to all of our faculty, asked them to please promote it and share it with their students. I also plan to obviously promote this via our social media. I also am hoping to do more of this both virtually and in person with our students, again, who are not only here at our main campus, but at our satellite campuses, because we want to make sure they have access to the library and that they know how to utilize the resources we have for them. So this is the flyer. It's very basic. I threw it together in like 3 minutes. It's just basically the facts of who, what, when, where. And but we asked some intriguing questions just so that we could say, basically, I'm trying to hook in the students and get them to come into the library so we can start that conversation so we can hopefully help them more in the future. Very very quickly, I run through a few scenarios here, and a lot of the classes you'll see in my notes that I taught at Miami-Dade College were either early morning, they started at 7 in the morning, some of them ran until 10 o'clock at night, and so we adjusted our schedules to teach those classes. Early on, I would get a little caught off guard because students were sometimes sleeping or they were not very engaged, and one of my colleagues told me that, you've got to just understand a lot of these students, especially at night, are working full-time, taking care of families, they're exhausted by the time they get here. So I even had a student one time who brought her little brother to class because the daycare was closed and her parents were at work. And so that was, again, something where we just adjusted, we made it work, and the class turned out fine. But sometimes you do have classes that just aren't engaged no matter what you do. And you'll notice one of my bullets there, next to the last one, or the last bullet, I say, the struggle is real. I love the phrase, the struggle bus, or the struggle is real, because it's the fun way to go. No matter what we do, we're not going to hook them in for that particular class. I like pop culture, and so I sometimes will toss just pop culture related topics out that catch the students off guard, because they'll think, how does this 40-plus-year-old guy know who Ariana Grande is, or that her album is, her Seven Rings single is #3 on iTunes. You'll see that image, and that's the album cover. They're intrigued by that, that I like to use Snapchat. And of course, as a typical, I hate to say typical librarian, I love my cat. I have a lot of photos of my cat. I will show photos of my cat. Sometimes it's just fun ways like that that get the classes more engaged. And I'm looking at my time. I'm going to quickly wrap up. Assessment, obviously, any way that we can get quick assessment from our students, feedback, what we did well, what we didn't do well. It could be via Kahoot, the app, maybe a quick survey, or just asking them afterward, what'd you like about that session? What didn't you like? Information literacy across the ages. This I just wanted to touch base very quickly is that, again, I utilize my own humor in saying I'm 40 plus. I remember using card catalogs as a freshman, and then now we're at the age of social media and online learning, and that's important. But I think if we learn to sort of use the reference interview process in either doing our information literacy classes or information literacy sessions, understanding what is the learning curve or learning base for the person we're working with, and so then we can backtrack from there. When working with non-traditional students, ESL students, or others who may be shy or uncomfortable in a class setting, maybe try to break the groups into smaller sessions, I provide my contact information for them, encourage them to reach out to us. I'm not fluent in Spanish by any means, but I do know enough Spanish to have some conversations, and the students at Miami-Dade College appreciated the fact that I would try my best to converse with them in Spanish if that was their primary language, and they appreciated that. I would fumble sometimes over my words, but I did my best, and I even had an app, Spanish to English or English to Spanish dictionary, that I kept on my phone, and that was just one extra way that my students appreciated the fact I was making that effort as a librarian to try to help them. And again, I'm trying to stay on time. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you all. Again, I'm not the expert in this, but I hope that what I've shared from my experiences is beneficial to you. And again, I definitely welcome any feedback, questions, or suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So while Lee and Barbara get their presentation up and going, does anybody have any questions for Dwayne? Dwayne, that was like super fast.
Awesome. Okay. I even had my timer set, so I was just wanting to make sure I didn't run late.
I'm glad you got your slides, because I feel like I missed a lot of that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, it was great. Those of you that have questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask, or you can put your questions in the chat box, and Barbara and Lee will go ahead and get their presentation up and going. So Dwayne, thanks so much. You can feel free to unshare your screen.
Okay. Thank you all.
So questions, comments, anybody? I myself work with non-traditional students, so I'm always fascinated to see how other people do. Anybody in this room also work with non-traditional students primarily? All right, well, we'll take the questions at the end then. Okay, so Lee and Barbara, whenever you're ready, go ahead and get started. Your screen looks great.
All right, and can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Great. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lee Richardson, and I'm here with my colleague, Barbara Renner. I'm going to be presenting, and Barbara is monitoring the chat feature. And she's already sent out a few URLs via chat if you want to take a look at those at some point. Barbara and I both work at the Health Sciences Library at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where Dwayne used to be. So hi there, Dwayne. And we're going to be talking today about evaluating a consumer health website. If I can get my slides, well, yeah, I'm trying to forward. There we go. What we're going to talk about is Your Health Radio, which is a 1-hour weekly consumer health radio talk show. It's recorded every week and then aired several times during the week. It's produced by the UNC Department of Family Medicine. And some librarians here, Barbara and I and a few other people have collaborated on this project with the physician host and the executive producer on the website blog. So we're going to talk a little bit more about all of this, but just to make sure it's clear, we do not work at all on the radio show itself. We focus on the website blog that was created for more information about the show. A little bit of background information about our collaboration. It started over 10 years ago, and the show hosts initially, they wanted help creating a website, and they also recognized it was important to index the information to make sure people could find everything. So what we did here at HSL is we used WordPress so that we could create a website blog for them. And over the years, we've continued to provide support for WordPress as problems and different questions and issues arose. And I began doing indexing of all the content that's posted on the blog, and I continue to do that today. Here's the actual website. Barbara did send you a link. This is an image from it. So an example blog post. This is one of the weekly shows. It was recorded, and you can see here it was posted on the blog, some good information there. The producer of the show starts this, and then we come behind her and we add a whole lot of information. Let's see. So everything in red here is a link. So you can see all these things are links to more information that we provided. We embed the audio file in the blog post. The main thing that we do is all of the topics that are included in the radio show, we find links to authoritative health information to supplement everything and add more information to everything that's included on the show. And all of that is for consumers. So the audience is anybody. And the idea is we want it to be easily understood, very accessible to anybody. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be any sort of healthcare professional to use this website and get this information. And over here on the right side, you see with the blue arrow, there are some timely topic extras. So we change that around periodically. And again, we go out and we find content, or we create a blog post and make content, more information on health resources. And here's an example of another kind of blog post that we've recently started creating. So in addition to the recording and the information from the actual show, librarians create other blog posts, and it varies as to what we do. In this particular example, there was some research shared on the show about smoking bans and the effect of that on lower blood pressure. So we have links there to the show. We have links to information about the research study. We have an abstract to the article. And then we also pull together other links that we thought would be of interest to people who are interested in this topic. Perhaps there are people who want more information about quitting smoking. So that's what we've provided there. And at the very bottom of the post, you see the categories and tags that have been added. We do that for all of the content on the blog. And the reason we started this recent project of looking back at our website and doing kind of a new evaluation is because our roles have changed quite a lot over the years. This project has been going on over 9 years now. Our responsibility has increased, and our authority and what we do, the roles we play, have increased. We've added, as I've just talked about, we enhance existing content. We find quality resources to add to what the doctors have done on the radio show. And we also, of course, have now started developing new content like the post I showed you a few minutes ago. And also here at the library, we've been able to hire a health literacy consumer health specialist librarian. So she has joined the Your Health team, and she's contributed some new things and shared some new ideas with us to take a fresh look at some of this. Here are some of the websites. I think Barbara sent all of these out via chat. These are some of the websites that we use. And for us, we're more interested here in the Health Sciences Library, of course. We're more interested in health information. And this is what we share with our patrons, with a variety of folks, so that when they're on the internet and they're looking at health materials, they can evaluate them. They can use the criteria from these websites to evaluate if it's good health information, if it's reliable, those kinds of things. Very similar to what most of us do with information literacy, where we also share information about just in general how to evaluate the authority and the value of a website. So what we did is we examined the entire website and we compared it with the published criteria from those sites that I just showed you. A couple of things that popped up for us, some areas that needed some specific areas that needed a little more attention, is authority and currency timeliness. For authority, some of the things that we're doing really well, there's great information on the site about the doctors, the folks who host the show, their affiliations, their credentials. The contact information is easy to find. But what we realized was not on the site was that sort of information for the librarians. And again, that's because this has evolved so much. When we started this project, that was not a need at all, but now it is. So we're talking about exactly what to say and where to put it on the website. We also looked at the currency, the time issues around information on the internet. And on WordPress, like many blog platforms, every post automatically gets a date. So when something is initially posted is not an issue, that's dated. But what we realized was we're not putting dates when we update other information. So sometimes on an older post, maybe a link is broken, or maybe a website that we were using has moved or changed, taken down information. And so we find something new and something that's going to work for that post. And we update it, but we have not made a note. So we know that now that we need to start doing that and make sure it's clear what has been updated and when it was updated. And we also realize there's not an overall statement about older content. As I said, this started back in 2010. So there's a lot of weekly posts on the blog. And of course, we can't recheck everything. We can't continuously update whatever might be out of date. We can't address all the broken links. So we want to put a statement about that. And again, we're thinking about what kind of wording to use and where should we put that so that people are well informed about those issues with the site. So that's about it. You can see again, there's the link. And we found this to be a very worthwhile exercise, and it may or may not be that useful for just a typical library website, but certainly If you are involved in helping with other websites outside of the core library website, I think this would be a good exercise to do, to look at various criteria and make sure that you are following the various guidelines that are recommended. And you can see there, and let's see, I'm looking at a little note here. Well, and you can see here's our contact information for Barbara and I. We do have some time for questions, but if you think of anything else later, or if you want more information about your health, we'd be happy to talk with anybody, happy to answer any questions.